So with me today on the CMO Spotlight is Kyra Hagan, who's the Vice President of Marketing for RxBenefits. Welcome, Kyra.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Kyra, I wonder if you could just start by telling us a little bit about RxBenefits. What does the organization do? And then we'll talk a little bit about your path to your current role.
Yeah, absolutely. So RxBenefits created a category. So it's hard to draw a parallel to other companies, but we are a pharmacy benefits optimizer. So we work to lower the cost of managing the pharmacy benefit or offering a robust pharmacy benefit for self-insured employers, and to ensure that their members are taken great care of, both clinically, so they get the right medication at the right time, but also in the service experience. So when they're at the pharmacy and something isn't covered, that, working parent who's been called out to daycare at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and is pulling into Walgreens or CVS at 6:30 for the prescription to be denied, we want to make sure we take great care of them when they pick up the phone and call for help.
Awesome. So, and how big is the organization-ish? And then tell us a little bit about your role within the organization.
Yeah, so the organization has a national presence. We work with self-insured employers through their employee benefits consultants. So we don't distribute our product directly to self-insured employers. Our sales force works with benefits consultants or brokers. So that's an interesting part of our go-to-market model that we'll talk a little bit about in the marketing dynamic. But as a result of that, we serve about 3 million members, and we're managing about $3 billion in annual pharmacy spend. So big and growing. It really makes us, we have a purchasing power that's equivalent to a Fortune 10 company. So if you look at our buying power, we're really bigger than like Amazon, Home Depot, and Apple combined. Wow. Which obviously helps the mid-market employer with that advantage when they're negotiating their pharmacy plan.
Excellent. So tell me about your role as VP of Marketing within the organization. What are you responsible for?
Yeah, so it's been a really exciting journey. I'm coming up about a month out from my 3-year anniversary at RxBenefits. I spent the first 20 years of my life in healthcare information technology on the provider side. So I spent about 10 years working with marketing software applications to ambulatory physician practices, and then 10 years at Cerner Corporation working in the acute healthcare space. And so this was a segue for me into pharmacy benefits and to selling solutions that were not 100% technology based. And I was the first VP of marketing, first marketing leader really at the company. So the company was founded, like all great startups, with less than a handful of people who had a dream about how to disrupt an industry where the status quo resulted in most employers significantly overpaying for the pharmacy benefit, and sort of grew through word of mouth and through those broker relationships by doing a great job by the clients. And then when the company took its first infusion of private equity capital, really got to start to grow the sales team. So the sales team had doubled and then doubled again. And then the third year, the playbook was, let's bring in a marketing leader so we can begin to grow beyond just feet on the street or boots on the ground. Thank goodness I got a good year under my belt before COVID hit. So we began to lay traction for having a digital presence. So the company's website had not been updated in over 3 years. Wasn't even mobile optimized. There wasn't a form or a conversion opportunity on the site.
It sounds like it's a fairly sales-driven culture and organization. So that was important to have on the site.
100%. And it's so funny. I still laugh when I talk to, my boss and CEO, Brian, because when I came in, I was like, well, what is your, why did you create the role? What is your vision for success? And he's like, because I was told I need one. And I really need the right person to tell me what marketing can do. No real concept. And now marketing and sales are lockstep at RxBenefits. We really operate as one revenue focused team, growth focused team. We have a great partnership there, but they are so much more digitally enabled, content enabled. It's just been a dramatic transformation. And again, very timely considering the entire world had to pivot, and those face-to-face meetings that were so integral in our distribution before came to a grinding halt.
Yeah, I'll bet. Well, it's great that you started that transformation pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, because I think there were a lot of companies that were really struggling to pivot as rapidly and quickly as they could into a more digital environment. They were a little bit behind if they didn't start pre-pandemic. So that was probably a good head start for you.
Yeah, I was thankful for that. Year runway makes a huge difference.
Sure. Well, so I'm curious, it sounds like you've spent a good chunk of your career in the healthcare space. And I'm just curious if there's any advice that you wish that you'd gotten early in your career, or maybe advice you would give to somebody who's just starting out in their marketing career or in their healthcare career for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone talks about this, what to healthcare, to the industry, was this novel concept of healthcare consumerism. And that industry is still making that pivot. It was an industry that for so long, with all of the volume, all of the transaction, was driven by providers, by physicians. People went where their physicians told them to go for care in terms of acute care, right? And they went to see the specialists that their primary care physician told them to go see. And everything, all distribution was completely controlled within that network. But then this crazy thing called the internet came along. Mm-hmm. And as people became more and more connected, and clearly social connection opened up, where people with a specific, very rare condition that affects less than maybe 2,000 people nationally now can find their peers,
right,
and other people like them, and share ideas and share treatment regimens and compare reviews on doctors. And people began to travel for specialty healthcare. It just has completely reinvented it. So I would just say always follow the patient in healthcare. Fight the good fight against that, and do the change management work that's necessary to pivot. If you go to hospital websites today, still often, the top ranked doctors in the provider directory are the providers that are long tenured, that are, chief of staff. They're not even accepting new patients. They haven't accepted new patients in 10 years. Why are they even in the provider directory?
Right.
Make an appointment, right? So making that, not forgetting that at the end of the day, the consumer is your buyer, and your customer is really important. And it's the same at RxBenefits. We have 3 hops until we get to the member, who is the patient. But ultimately, the value creation happens in keeping that benefit affordable for that member, and making sure that they have access to the medications they need. We're fighting in many ways against the direct-to-consumer advertising that happens from these drug manufacturers, who are spending, $6.3 billion last year,
right,
direct-to-consumer advertising, as much as they're spending on R&D. Of course, sometimes when I watch those commercials, I'm like, why would anyone want to take that medication? It sounds like, yeah.
They seem to highlight the side effects, which is part of their mandate, I know, in the spots. But yeah, it does make you wonder, do you really need that treatment?
Right. But there are so many people in that pharmacy ecosystem, and likewise in the healthcare ecosystem, that benefit through manipulation of the patient, when all the patient really wants is to get well, or to prevent illness in the first place. And so we like to say at RxBenefits that there's always a market to do good by doing good. And that's really what we're focused on, is by being an equalizer who levels the playing field for those mid-market plan sponsors, keeps the cost of the benefit down for them, so by extension for that employee. And in today's environment, when people are very worried about going into the healthcare setting and the potential exposure to COVID or whatever, that prevention is so big. And medications are a great frontline defense mechanism for a number of chronic conditions, diabetes, et cetera. So I wake up, and I motivate my team to wake up every day thinking about the real implication of the work we do, and the effect that it has on the longevity and quality of people's life.
Yeah, but I like what you said. I mean, the original question was about advice in your career, and in your case, putting the patient at the center. But certainly for any marketer, I'd say you're just putting the consumer. In your case, the consumer is a healthcare consumer
Correct.
or a patient. But at the end of the day, if you put them at the center of your all of your efforts, then you're not going to be led astray.
Yes.
I love it.
Mission.
So I love it. In terms of, I believe that everybody has a superpower, and I'm curious what you believe your superpower might be.
Oh, I thought I knew I have a few different positions of strength that I lean on. But I think that finding a way to inspire my teams to greatness has really been what has perpetuated and fueled my career. I look for people who have the right attitude and aptitude and heart, who really buy into the mission of the company and are working for more than driving revenue or driving clicks or whatever, who believe that fundamentally, like we do at RxBenefits, that if you don't convince someone to allow you to solve their problem through your solutions, then you've done them a disservice, who really take it to heart. And that fuels a level of passion and creativity and a work ethic that is sort of unparalleled when people are in it for the greater good. And then I really empower those people and create an environment where it's safe to fail. Marketing is the great experiment. Everything we set out to do is nothing more than a thesis until we deploy it in the world and see what happens. And so, I repeat all the time, we're going to think big. We're going to start small. We're going to move fast, and we're going to optimize as we go. And that's sort of the mantra and philosophy. So that ability to rainmake, I guess, to cast a vision that people buy into and allow the creativity to boil up from the ground to attack that, in the different disciplines of marketing has created a scale and sort of a tailwind for all of the companies I've worked with that I'm really proud of.
Love it. So as a leader, what are the values that you want to demonstrate to your team, or what are the values that you demand in somebody that you might hire to become a part of your team?
Yeah, so integrity is integral. It's integral to me in the companies that I've chosen to work for. So I have to really believe that the mission is more than words on a paper that appeal to shareholders or the public, the customer. I operate best in a culture that lives its values every day. And so I look for people who are buying into the mission and culture, who live that too, because that is what allows you to free people up to make their own decisions and to really solve problems. If I know that a horrible decision was grounded in a great intent, I can live with that.
Right. Well, to your point about, encouraging mistakes, you have to take some risks to make mistakes, but as long as your heart's in the right place, maybe that mistake is less, it's easier to stomach because at least your heart was in the right place.
That's it. And so I lift my team up. I give that, I run a very flat hierarchical type of organization. I don't speak to my direct reports differently than their direct reports differently than theirs. And I give them all opportunity in front of, my C-suite peers. When they own a project, I allow them to own it. And likewise, as a result of that, they do the same for each other. So we have a really positive culture of, we win and fail as a team. And so there's plenty of room for everyone to succeed. And there's plenty of shared ownership when we make a mistake. And that true working team is able to do, it accelerates the value that each person brings. So again, I think it's all about teams. That has been my superpower, is finding people that bring different perspectives and talents together, but are good people. So that we have that dynamic in the workplace of trust. Team, I always say a team is not a group of people who work together. It's any team of people who trust each other.
I love that too. So as you may know, we're marketing matchmakers, and often that means we connect brands and marketing agencies together. And the value of that in our world is that we don't live squarely on the client side, and we don't live on the agency side either. We sort of live in that space in between. So we think a lot about how brands and clients work with marketing agencies. So I'm curious, just generally, how do you work with agencies today? Do you work with a lot of agencies? Do you have a couple of key agencies, and how do you work with them?
We work with agencies in a pretty limited capacity, actually, at this point. We have an internal creative team that is, I'm very blessed to have a fantastic creative director who, in his background, was an agency talent, and not many will cross the pond to the dark side of working on an internal marketing team, but he's done that.
You mean crossover to be able to go home at a reasonable hour in the evening?
Yeah, but it can be boring working with the same brand,
Right.
But he brought to the table so much experience. At the company that he worked for previously, he managed 150 brands in their portfolio. So his context switching is fantastic, and his creativity. So we're able to achieve a lot more in-house with a speed and at a price point, frankly, that allows us to look bigger than what our budget would tell you that we are. But as RxBenefits continues to expand its 5-year vision, to think about the data and the problems we're solving and new applications for those adjacent markets that we may go into, we're looking at potentially a long-term, even corporate rebrand. In that type of area, I will certainly engage an agency. And then we have a lot of friends and family inside of various agencies that have expert skill sets in certain things. So we will go out and hire top talent for a particular job that we need done, either within a time frame where our plate is full, or where we know that the level of skill or expertise or even equipment required exceeds what's on the bench. It's more project-based rather than retainer-based at this point.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned the rebrand work and things like that might be an example of something that you would look for external expertise or perspective. Usually clients hire agency support because they don't have enough capacity to execute something that they want to execute, that's bigger, or a lack of capability. We don't have expertise in every single discipline of marketing. So we would lean on external support for that specific discipline. So I'm curious, is there a certain function or discipline that you always feel should be kept within? And always is a strong word, but just generally you would want to keep that function within RxBenefits, and are there certain other functions that you feel like, man, we could really benefit from that external support?
Yeah, so the closer to the heart of the brand and the positioning, I like to keep that in-house, right? So the product marketing function, the development of language and tone and other things, because we know our industry better than any agency ever will. We are working with the field-facing commercial team that's interacting with our constituents on a daily basis. We can get that real-time feedback on how that meeting went and how that slide worked, or how that redirect question, what concerns did it raise? And so that agility to be able to take those commercial ground game learnings and iterate for the next meeting it gives you a tremendous amount of power to respond to competitive threats, to respond to changing market conditions. And so sort of the heart and soul of who RxBenefits is, I like to lead internally. But once that framework is established and you need execution at the project level, so we need the best, product intro video for the, or whatever, that's where, again, when capacity is limited or talent's limited, then I'm more comfortable farming those things out.
Yeah. Well, we're hearing even more and more these days too, with the quote talent wars and how hard it is to find great marketing, team, that often clients are now, trying to hire an art director and a copywriter and a project manager and account person and all of those roles, and developers and user experience people and all of those things. It's harder to hire those headcount than it would be to potentially hire an agency that has a team full of various disciplines. So that's another, to me, that's either a capacity or capability issue, but yeah.
It is. Well, and let's not forget, we're in the middle of the Great Resignation, where it's a job hunter's market. And so, competing for that type of talent is not a layup. I think we have something special in our culture and in the team dynamic I talked about already, that I hope has put a protective fence around my great people that I want to keep. But certainly, there are definitely times when you need that specialized expertise that doesn't make sense. You can't have that person on the bench twiddling their thumbs the rest of the time. And so, that's where you go out and get them. But I just have found that the amount of time that is required to invest in that partner to help get them up to speed, but then keep them up to speed in an industry as volatile as pharmacy and healthcare, which is legislatively influenced and all these other things, there's got to be a lot of bang for the buck to make it worth it on the return. Because otherwise you're looking at your highest level of employee, myself, my director of product marketing, my creative director brand, spending infinite hours with those people. And that can be paralyzing too. So it's a balancing act.
Yes. So you mentioned that your CEO was not a natural marketer by trade, and that we as marketers often have to work with a team that aren't marketers by trade. And so I'm curious, how do you demonstrate? You also talked a little bit about the alignment between sales and marketing within RxBenefits, and how well aligned you are. So I'm just curious, how do you show the value of what you're doing in marketing to the non-marketers within the organization to really demonstrate it?
Well, first, as all new leads of marketing do, you find a way to create some momentum out of the gate. And not having a digital presence at RxBenefits, it was very easy to do, right? And people begin to feel that, and socializing that internally. What I found when I got to RxBenefits is it was a kind of like a dream layup, because we were sitting on these mounds of customer evidence where we had these fantastic stories to tell, where we not only delivered on what we promised, but we far exceeded, the savings that we had promised, or, we have a line where our members can call and leave a comment after they interact with one of our representatives. And so, without fail, Joe, and it sounds corny, but we do a quarterly all hands meeting with the entire company, and we create a highlight reel out of those phone calls. I cry every time.
Yeah.
Because people are in a very vulnerable state. They've been diagnosed with a condition that they didn't see coming, or they have a child who's facing a life-threatening illness, or, they're a caretaker for someone in a fragile situation. And they're trying to navigate healthcare, which is in and of itself complex. And then you're touching on the other component of it, which is finances, which is the second most emotional, because you're literally talking about life and meeting my essentials. Do I choose between the medicine or a roof over my head?
Bottom towards the bottom of Maslow's pyramid of hierarchical needs, food,
Correct.
shelter, health is definitely got to be near the foundational level of that.
Exactly. So by beginning to surface what really makes a brand, right? The fulfillment of the promise. What are you doing in the world and how does it make a difference? And bringing those stories to life, it created an energy inside the company where people began to really feel their connection to what they did made a difference to those people. And that built its own momentum. So that was first. But then there's the, how does it pay for itself? That's great. Everybody's excited, but how do we translate that to commercial success? And we are in an evolution to report and have transparency into what works and doesn't. As I mentioned, there was really so we needed to re-architect our CRM and our data infrastructure. I needed a lot more sales documentation around activities they're engaging in. So we knew how to come in and nurture those conversations over time and who we should talk to and where the representative in the territory had it. But today we have directly been able, we've built enough of an attribution model where we can see marketing's influence on pipeline. So where are we generating qualified leads that generate actual meetings with our reps to meet face-to-face with brokers, and where those brokers are generating for us. The next step in our sales process is a claims file. We want to take a retrospective look at how a plan performed in the previous year. And we have a proprietary tool that allows us to reprice it and show them if they had been an RxBenefits customer at that time, what would the spend have been? So that's a very concrete way to begin to understand the savings. So we're able to measure that step in the journey and marketing's influence on that all the way down to membership. And so, we have a direct formula now for calculating ROI on campaigns. And then everyone is just feeling the brand go through creating that category of the PBO, and seeing that picked up and used in the media now. And, articles being written around why you need a PBO, just in all of the facets. I think people are feeling the power of it. And unfortunately, we have the problem of supply creates its own demand. So now that people know what marketing can do, we're hitting the wall in terms of requests for.
Right. Well, again, you've done a good enough job of creating enough demand that now you've got capacity issues, which is good. It's good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. I'm going to shift gears and ask you a couple of questions that have nothing to do with marketing or that are just for fun. So the first is there a band or a movie or a book or a sports team or a quote that really inspires you?
Oh, wow. There are many. A band.
You can pick more than one if you'd like.
Quote.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure that it's any of those things, but I'll tell you one of the places I'm always the most inspired. I get inspired just thinking about it. And since childhood, I've been inspired by Disney. And I still find them new reasons to be inspired by them at a personal level and in the business world on a regular basis. I think today, in healthcare, I talked about the Disney experience a lot and how healthcare needed to shape shift to deliver a more Disney-like experience to healthcare consumers. They just do a great, but it's such an immersive experience when you think about the brand and that childhood wonder. If you had the privilege of being able to go to a Disney park as a child, it was hard not to believe you'd been transported to really a different universe.
Right. Well, okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, which is classic Disney movie or character, and then more recent, more modern Disney movie or character that's your favorite, and why?
Oh, wow. Classic Disney character that is my favorite. Man.
Or movie.
Or movie, yeah. I mean, every little girl, or most little girls love the princesses. I think I know I wore out, I'll age myself. I wore out my Sleeping Beauty record with the book that you flip the
There
pages
you go.
when the record dings. Because why? It's all about hope, and it's about love prevails and goodness prevails. And, it's the underdog, the kind of I guess have always been drawn to seeing a champion arise out of the ashes. So, yeah.
I love that. And is there a more modern one that in recent times that you've really admired or that you really liked?
Yeah. So, big Moana fans. I love Disney's ability to connect with people of all cultures, people of all different value systems, and find what's common in all of us. I think they lay a great foundation with children so that they hopefully grow up and embrace, the values of diversity and inclusion. But I think they have an ability through entertainment to change the minds of hardened adults even.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic story. It embraces, it crosses generational gaps and it embraces that our love of our own culture, it doesn't have to be to the exclusion of others. And I just think they teach a lot of life lessons.
I like that. So other than Disney and other than your family, I'm curious if there's something that gives you great joy outside of work.
There are many things, but I am a lover of water. So I seek water in any form or fashion that I can get to it. From the pool in my backyard to I spend a lot of time fishing with my husband. We have a lot of great fishing lakes in Alabama. We spend a lot of time on the boat. We're not too far from the beautiful Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
And I'm spoiled that my in-laws have a gorgeous house on Highway 30A, which is the peak destination for people in the South. And so, spend a lot of time there. But my husband and I are actually talking about buying our first sort of center console offshore worthy boat, and maybe that later this summer taking our own trip from Miami over to the Bahamas by ourselves. It's only 90 miles.
Wow.
But to say I took my own boat to the Bahamas is pretty cool. So
I was just going to say that the next best thing to owning your own boat and being able to do that is having a good friend that has a boat like that you can do it with. So you don't have to deal with all the headaches of the boat.
I know, but I'm a control freak, so I don't know if I would,
And you could pick the exact one the way you like it and configure it the way you like it.
And it's the security checklist, right?
Right. Fair, totally fair. All right.
I'm one who kind of wants to open the cockpit door when I get on the plane and be like, have you been drinking this?
Totally fair, and as you should. So my last question is just: is there a question that you wish that I had asked as part of this conversation, or maybe you think that I should ask future conversations like this?
I guess it was a great and positive conversation. I think sometimes we hesitate as marketers. We have to be in a good headspace to do what we do, right? We should be eternal optimists by trade. But sometimes we need to talk about the darker and harder parts of what we do. And I think that the question you touched on is I had a great story to tell this time about how I proved the value of marketing. But how you convince the naysayers, how you work, and how you've built bridges with people who still believe that marketing is fluff.
Right.
We're t-shirts and koozies, or right. Because there's still a lot of work to be done to get marketing an equal seat at the C-suite table.
Right.
And to understand its potential as a growth driver of a business, to see it as a profit generating source of revenue versus a cost center, and how people have been successful at doing that, I think is that's what I get asked about the most at different B2B conferences and other from people who are 10 or 20 years behind me in their career is, how do I get out of this like necessary evil?
Yeah. Well, I often ask about if there's a campaign or program that taught you a great deal. And I usually caveat that by saying, because it was a huge failure and it taught you a lesson that you absolutely needed to learn,
right?
Or it was a huge success and it blew up. But the reality is, I think that, to your point, sometimes those failures and those really, we have good intentions when we set the plan, and then the plan flops, and it teaches us more than we ever would learn from the big success.
Yes. What I have to tell you on that note, I've got to share this story with you. So this is when I learned not to panic. All is not lost, even when something goes horribly wrong. We were doing a campaign where we were trying to convert our clients, which were physician practices, from paying their software support on an annual basis. So we had to invoice and chase it, to evergreen contracts where it was automatically renewing. And as a result of that, they would be entitled to the latest version of our software. Even if we deprecated and sunset their application and launched something totally new, they would get the licenses for free.
Yeah.
We called it this evergreen campaign, and we decided to send trees. Found a company that sent these evergreen seedlings in a plastic tube, and we were sending them to every physician practice across the US. And the tubes all cracked in
oh no, dirt everywhere and right?
and dead
trees. Oh gosh.
or moldy trees or whatever, right? And so, I mean, they could not make it through the postal system. They had clearly never tried to ship these trees. We had an 88% response rate on that campaign because everybody either called to let us know that we should never do that again because
I got a dead tree, or I got a dirt,
or to get their replacement tree.
Right. Which meant you had to ship more trees.
Right. But we got to talk to almost everybody. Right. So did it fail or did it? No.
Well, right. I mean, it caused engagement, and as marketers, we dream of engagement, and that's a great example of one that it was a huge flop in some regards and a huge success in others.
Right.
And I'd say overall still a success.
But that's why I'm like, we never give up. We don't, it's like, how do you morph this and find the positive? And yeah, we did.
I love it. Well, Kyra Hagan is the Vice President of Marketing for RxBenefits. Thank you. This is an amazing conversation. Really appreciate it.
It was great. Thank you so much, Joe, again, for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.